Alright guys, we're back again with another episode with myself and Nick, and today we're talking about what are we talking about? Talking about high value, how to structure your... I have totally missed the title of our call. Let me go back to it. Talking about sales process. Talking about how do you gain market share in a saturated market?
Good question. How do you? Okay, well, let's look at an example. Let's start with an example. Let's look at the A2 milk campaign that's been running for the last few years, I think now, where they've just somehow come up with a bunch of cows that don't have a particular enzyme. I don't even know what the other enzyme is actually, but the positioning is quite interesting, where they're sharing the cows who only have this A2 enzyme, protein, whatever it is better than cows that have whatever the other thing is. I'm guessing, I don't know, A1? I guess the point is that as a consumer, you don't even need to know what the other stuff is. And what was interesting about these guys is that they've been able to do positioning by excluding an ingredient, which is quite fascinating. That it's the absence of something that is making their product work better.
It's one of those markets that you think of and go, milk, it's been around for what? How long have humans been drinking milk in somewhat of commercial sense? Let's say at least 100 years in the commercial way we're doing now, but...
Yeah. I guess refrigeration, increased it, but yeah, I think...
Prior to that, we were always selling it.
Yeah, you probably had, your own cow and you just milked it every morning. That would be... So I'm guessing at least a couple of 100 years, if not a few thousand.
It's not a new product, and it's... How many times can you create something... How many times can you innovate on that kind of thing? So
the innovation here is positioning, not product, and that's what makes that case study very interesting. Is that they've gone into a market that like you would not think like. I mean, can you imagine coming up with a proposal like, okay, guys, I'm trying to raise money because I'm gonna sell milk. I mean, they tell you where to go. So from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense. The innovation is around the positioning and the absence of an ingredient that is making that made that product sell. So that's, I guess, one way in which you can enter into a saturated market. And I suppose if you were to turn that into a principle, the principle would be to think, keep finding something that the others don't have, or a place where you can play, where you're hard to compete against. And I suppose because they own the A2 positioning now, it's very difficult for someone to take it off them now. I mean, I'm guessing there's cows out there that others may have access to that don't produce the whatever the other enzymes are or proteins, but they can't own that positioning. Especially in a B2C space where there's only so much shelf space available at the retail shelf level. Once you've gained that positioning in the mind of the customer, it's very difficult for someone else to come in, put something else there. And I suppose that goes back to the whole Al Ree's positioning book, which was, once you own a dominant idea or thought about your product, no one else can take it.
Once it's attached to you.
Correct. But let's transition that into the online world, where most people are trying to copy other people's positioning. That's what the competitor research thing is all about. And let's just copy what somebody else is doing. What's the winning ad look like? What's the winning landing page look like? And I'm just going to, copy it. So as a counter, I suppose that's probably not a bad place to start. But I think too many businesses that at least I'm seeing online, they tend to stop. They think copying is the strategy, when I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table. Sure, copying gets you some win, or at least allows you to quickly execute. But at some point, if you want to become the dominant player, you have to come up with something that is uniquely just yours, but is also hard for someone else to grab.
Yeah. So I guess that's where you start to look at how you can really be different in the marketplace and how you can add value. If you want to gain market share, you really need to be unique or add value above and beyond what your competitors, people in the space are already doing.
I think, but the interesting point about uniqueness is that it's got to be relevant uniqueness, not just uniqueness for uniqueness sake. So for example, let's say if we come out and make a car and we say, we're going to come up with a new color of pink that no one has. Yeah, sure, it's unique, but it's not relevant, or maybe very relevant to a very small percentage of the segment of the market. Yeah, and probably not enough to make a business out of it. And so it's not uniqueness per se. It's the relevance of the uniqueness. That's the first point. The other point is that you can create uniqueness through many ways. One is product innovation, but that's only one. The other is positioning, which is essentially what the A2 cow people have done, or the A2 milk people have done, where it's the absence of ingredient is how they've been able to create the perception that how we're so different.
Let's talk about Amazon, because we did discuss this earlier.
Yes.
And they have a nice, healthy margin as an overall business, but on the product inventory base, they don't actually make much money.
Yeah, because most of their revenue from memory, I think it's Amazon Prime makes a good chunk, which is a continuity payment, and has got nothing to do with the product per se. It's a payment to access the product. Okay?
That's the most brilliant thing he's done. He wasn't sure how it goes. It was a gamble. Like, not everyone said it would not work.
Yeah, actually, I think from one of the interviews he had done, it actually didn't survey really well.
Yeah, it surveyed horribly.
Like whenever they asked people, they're like, whatever. But once they released it, it just took off. So here we got again an idea that where I think the latest cure for online marketing problems is to survey people. But that works, yes. But it's not without its error as well. Because if it really was that easy, then I think there would be no need to innovate. There would be no need to take risk. Let's just all survey everybody, and then there would be no arbitrage. So I think asking your customers about is some way to learn about the market. But the other one is sometimes you just go with your gut and just take a punt. That's I think many businesses have been built on scratching your own itch.
I think that's when, especially businesses like Amazon, when you've got the fact that someone like Bezos was still running it, so he's able to make risk as the primary owner. So one thing.
Yeah. So I think
we discussed this before.
I had a discussion probably with either with you or with Scott Bywater.
Probably both of us by the sounds of things.
Yeah, as to why is he able to make these kind of decisions? And I think my conclusion, or at least my take on it, is the fact that he doesn't get remunerated through income. He gets remunerated through capital, as in the value of his equity, the value of his business, and therefore the value of his equity. So he's able to take a 10, 20, 30-year horizon on the investments he wants to make, while the typical CEO does not own large, at least the professionally hired CEO, does not own large chunks of the business.
So they're judged on the 90-day cycles.
Yeah, or the 1 year, because generally speaking, they do have some cash component, some short-term compensation plan, and some component in the long term. But even then, even though the long term, which is predominantly the share price, it's not that long. It's not like like a 10-year vesting period. It's short.
I think average CEO is 6 or 7 years.
In terms of tenure, no, I think the average CEO only hangs around for about 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years now.
Yeah, so 3 or 4 years. It depends from company to company, but and so because of the way that the owner operator, I guess if you can call him an owner operator, because a large chunk of his wealth is stored in the value of the business, and he owns a reasonable large chunk of it. His gain in terms of is purely derived by the value of the underlying asset rather than any income.
Yes, the upside of making a bigger risk is much more valuable for something like that. Whereas if you're a hired CEO, if you make a mistake, it's going to look the downside is much larger than the upside.
Correct. And also because he has a longer term time horizon, he's able to go for big payoffs, while the typical CEO does not have that long-term horizon. So they're looking for short-term payoffs, in which case they're not investing in assets, or they're not investing in projects, I should say, which may have a slightly longer term payoff. I remember having a chat to an ASX listed CEO a couple of years ago, and the idea was to do some sort of a marketing plan for some sales process stuff, but it was going to take 2 years for the payoff to happen, and they were basically like not interested. And I said, oh, why is that? Because I need to be able to see returns by 30 June, by the end of the financial year, and which I thought was a very interesting way of looking at how to invest. It actually didn't make any sense at all, because there are large payoffs generally occur from reasonably longer term or larger type projects, not necessarily larger in terms of investment projects, as in dollar value, but the payoff periods tend to be longer, or you'll have to play the game for a bit longer before the payoff happens. And so if you're not taking advantage of those, then you're effectively in the long term are reducing the value of the business. So it's counterproductive to the shareholders.
But within your tenure of being a CEO, you've actually done really well.
Correct. Yeah. So you've done all right, because your payoff happens. So essentially, what happens is, this is where the whole agency problem is, which is the executive team optimizes for its payoff while giving the perception that it's actually creating value for shareholders. Okay. Because there is a misalignment, right? There's a misalignment
of goals and the way that they're being judged. If they actually did what was beneficial to the company in the long term, their short term results look pitiful.
Correct, and not just that, they might even get fired. So I'm not saying that these guys aren't doing the right thing, because they may be doing within the constraints that are given to them. Is probably the rational decision to make. Actually, would be to go for short term payoffs, purely because you say, well, you know what, we're gonna shift our perspective to do longer term projects, and you're not seeing short term upticks in the quarterly earnings. You're probably gonna get smashed. But anyway, I guess we've moved a little bit off topic of the sales process here. But that's So let's
get back. Okay, let's talk about online space. So if you are a specialist of any type, let's talk consultative type sales. If you're a specialist type knowledge, how do you package your value and how do you sell it to the marketplace?
Okay, so I guess credibility would be the number one way of doing it. So the perception of a track record, and I'm saying perception purely because you can kind of manufacture it, right? Yeah. That's what the whole testimonial thing's about. And that can be done with an effective marketing program. So, for example, you could have every client who you ever worked with, the minute they get a reasonable payoff, to ask them for a testimonial or to endorse you on LinkedIn or whatever. And so over time, you end up building, wow, he's got endorsed by 100 people. But the endorsement happened purely because you had a marketing program of endorsement, not necessarily that you're better than someone who wasn't endorsed. And essentially, that's what you're doing. You're creating data points of credibility and proof to set yourself up differently within the marketplace. And that applies for, I guess, across the board for any other product or service, but more so on the services side, where and then once again, you're using social proof there, right? You're essentially creating credibility or manufacturing proof, if you can call it that, and then using that as a way to set yourself apart. And that's why people write books. But if you ever look, most nonfiction books, don't sell after the launch period. That's because the whole purpose of the book was not to sell the book, but was to get
a
title of a bestseller in a certain category. And so then you can say, well, I'm a New York Times bestseller or Amazon bestseller or whatever bestseller, and that's what gives you credibility when it comes to pricing your services. Is that you're not dealing with any accountant, you're dealing with the accountant that's been given some award.
I guess that's a differentiation in itself. So if you are in a creative marketplace, how can you start to become a smaller and smaller section of the place? So are you using testimonials? Do you have that book? Do you have those other data points that people can look at?
Correct. Yeah. So that's essentially what you're doing. Is you're and I guess it's no different to a due diligence project, right? When you're acquiring a business or whatever, it's what are the data points people are going to look for.
Yeah.
And
or can you go into a smaller pool where you truly are a specialist?
Correct. Yeah. That would be the other way of doing it. Would be to keep niching down until you find a small pool. The issue is a valuable is the pool big enough? Sorry, is the amount of money being spent? It's not about the number of people; it's how much each person is spending in that pool.
If it can be a smaller pool that spends quite a lot,
yeah,
or has a burning desire type problem that you can fix.
So I guess if you're a specialist tax guy for people with who are worth more than $1 billion, then you probably only need one client. So whereas if you want to do $50 tax returns, then you're probably going to need a reasonably large pool because your dollar value per client is going to be a fraction, and that's essentially, I guess. So I guess to bring it back to sales processes, it's making sure that you're playing to your edge and advantages, and not to someone else's. And I think that's the other issue I'm seeing certainly online is people promote what they're good at. So hey, I've been able to get so many clients without spending money on Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever the heck it is, and how you can do that too. But the point is that the person who's done that, he may already have a ton of credibility, or he's a great speaker, or
they have other channels they're already doing exceptionally well that they're not really telling you about. So you look at Facebook. You've seen companies that are spending hundreds of thousands on Facebook, but they don't actually know the return they're making.
Yeah, that once again is a great data point as to someone who's actually clueless about their own sales process.
If you're looking at it from purely at the point of that, hey, this guy's spending a lot of money, and you're looking at the point of, if you look at that as your pure perspective of success, you're going to copy someone who's not actually getting results.
That's precisely one of the issues with competitor research is that you can actually get data now as to this ad ran for 6 months, and the assumption is, or the presumption is that clearly it must be working. That's why they're running it.
I think we were speaking about this earlier.
And that's not true at all.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dumb advertising out there, or the motivation for the advertising is not known to us, because I think we all assume that all advertising is going to be done to generate revenue, but that's not true at all. For example, I remember many years ago I spoke to someone who ran one of the large ad agencies, or at least it was a pretty senior one of the ad agencies in New York, and he was telling me that they ran billboard ads because the buyer at Walmart or one of the large retail chains believed that would be a good way to sell the product. And so the entire ad campaign was created
to please one person.
satisfy one person or a committee there, so that they could get the product on the shelf. And it was just the cost of business. So if you saw the ad, you were like, oh my God, these guys have got billboards everywhere, and they've been running in for the last, X months. Therefore, it must work. When the whole reason for having the billboards was not marketing or sales or advertising.
Feed someone's ego.
It was just basically to feed the ego, or just the cost of business to get the product onto the shelf. And so without understanding why someone is doing something, which we don't have the benefit of, all we're looking at is data, and from then we're drawing conclusions. You can get erroneous data points, which is why if you are going to do competitive research, use somebody else's sales process, but also come up with...
Ask questions beyond those questions, initial stuff.
Correct. Or just come up with the opposite of what everybody else is doing and test it out as well. Because at the end of the day, you want to increase the number of options you have to hit your target market. And so copying what the market is doing is one way of doing it. But in some ways, by copying, the minute you copy, you actually become part of the noise.
I think I've called you up a couple of times this week with the kind of question, like, last, 3-4 days, I've discovered about $500,000 worth of wasted ad spend.
Yeah, and it's happens more No, I don't mean to laugh about it, but it's really kind of mind-boggling that people will take their hard-earned capital that they've already generated, and just flush it down the toilet without any tracking or analytics in place or anything in place to measure their return on investment. It's criminal, actually.
Yeah.
But it happens every day of the week because the person who's making the decision, there are no ramifications to wasting capital.
Okay, so let's get a bit more concrete. So we're talking about adding data points into your sales process that people can reference. Your book, you've got testimonials, so you build that into the way you work with people. But
yeah, okay. So
if you were let's go. If you were to start consulting today,
yep,
how would you sell your services?
Good question. Not that I want to sell consulting services, but if I were to sell consulting services, then yeah, I guess I would rely upon the people that I've helped so far to give me evidence or start manufacturing proof. Now, let's say if I don't have any proof, so say I don't know, my hard drive crashed and the people that I knew have moved away and I can't find them anymore, what would I do then? Okay, well then the only way to do it would be to work for free to manufacture the credibility really fast.
Okay.
Or some discounted offer there, or essentially the offer would be, or the goal is not to make money, but the goal is to manufacture proof, and so you would put your earnings based on success outcomes. So I suppose if you're big and famous, then you can say, you know what, I'm going to charge $100,000, and I want my money in my account first before I'll even look at your project. And you can do that if you've already got credibility. But if you don't, and you still want to start $100,000, well, how do you do that? We'll say, well, let's do a revenue split, right? I'll do all the work, I'll even run the ads, and then when you start making $1, you can give me, I don't know, X% of it. And or even better would be, but you don't have to pay me for another 90 days. So then the guy will be like, okay, you know what, this guy's an idiot. Let me sign on the dotted line. But the whole point was, once again, is that you're constructing the offer not because you want to get the business, but is because you want to manufacture or you want to create the
credibility points that other people can use in your future.
Exactly. And so here, any upfront revenue you forego is essentially an investment in your marketing. It would be the other way of looking at it. Yeah, it would be to say that I'm foregoing all this is so rather than running ads, I'm rather than running $10,000 in ads, I'm going to put the $10,000 into the offer and risk that with a small number of clients than to put a whole bunch of money into Facebook ads and expose myself to let's say 1,000 people and hopefully get one of those at a full price. I think it might be easier in that case just to do an outreach with an offer that is so compelling that they'd be like, you know what, yeah, done. Where do I sign? Would be the question. Would be the response you want if you don't have any credibility and you want to enter the market.
So I guess moving beyond that, if you've got that stuff happening, you want to go switch to more of an education kind of front end, then have an offer that they can start with.
Correct. Yeah. So that's where your the thing is because of the amount of content that's already out there, in order to resonate with the market, I think at least I'm seeing that you're better off not producing volume of content, but to produce something that is essentially like a
branding piece.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive. Juxtaposition, I guess, would be the appropriate word to use. It's when a boy eats own head, kind of a headline thing.
It's a shock and awe kind of headline, or we're talking about more content?
But once again, shock and awe needs to be in context of the market. So if you want to shock and awe, a CEO, it's going to be a very different headline to if you want to shock and awe for a skincare product.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the principles are the same. Humans still resonate with things that are weird, because that's the whole I guess our reptilian programming, where we're looking to make sure we don't get eaten.
In which case, going back to the whole kind of copywriting headlines and looking what works and look at how you can apply some of those principles to your own market.
Yeah, and so I think the value of market research is to see what's worked, and then the actual execution would be to come up with 25 versions of it, and then test as much as the budget you can afford, and have the proper tracking analytics in place so that you can know where you're losing money and where you're making money, and then basically double down on where it's working. That's probably how I would go. If I were to do, let's say, for example, if I had no credibility and I wanted to start consulting today, I would come up with a stupid offer where I would make people think like, hey, this guy's really something, it's got a bit of a loose.
Let me start again for anyone listening about this. Step 1, get skill that's worth selling. So in your case, analytics / management finance experience.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But you know what? I suppose you could use your first client or your first few clients to build the capability too. Because if it's success based, and you're like, listen, I'm not proven here, but I'll put my money where my mouth is. You don't have to pay me anything if it doesn't work, and use that as a way to build your capability. I think that's a far better way to build capability because it's relevant, it's market tested, rather than saying, well, let me go do a degree or let me go do years of study and then somehow become an expert. I think you're better off being a practitioner and then learning through experimentation and tweaking and tinkering and that sort of thing, than to go down the whole knowledge book route and then realize that you've just learned a whole bunch of garbage. because there's a lot of learning that happens that is not knowledge based, but is actually, it kind of comes from having failed. Yeah. And I think that's probably the more important knowledge you want to gain. I don't even know what you call it. What is it, like tacit?
Bang your head against the wall until you learn it. Knowledge.
Yeah, kind of getting punched in the face. and that gives you the real world resilience and the real world feedback to find nuances that work, and that's the whole. And that's the reason why someone hires a consultant, is because he's bashed his head against the wall a few times. And I've seen that with guys who've written a lot of copy, like where you'll share a sales letter with them, and you're like, you know what, that paragraph should be sitting on top. And if you ask them like, why do you think that, they'll give you some rational reason for it. But the real reason is the fact that they just have years of experience and they've got this, this sixth sense about this stuff, and that's just that's the time. Yeah,
they've got that inbuilt heuristics that they can't explain.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's unexplainable. And I've seen it in the trading market. I've seen it with guys who pick offers in for affiliate offers. I've seen it with people who are trying to create headlines or even a really pro level football player or soccer player or whatever. You just you give them a ball and then they'll come up with a way to kick it that defies belief. And so but that you only get that when you've been in the game a long time and you failed a lot.
Right. I think that's good. And I think moving back to the B2C market, how, again, counterintuitive, get something that's different to what everyone else has in the space, or change it through pricing influence.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so in the B2C space, because I was previously involved with the business where we launched about 30 or 40 brands over a 10-year period. And this is fast moving good products. And the primary strategy was, can we come up with a better product at a better price? So essentially, it was the offer that sold it rather than. And of course, we had all the advertising.
Which is counterintuitive to what most people think.
And all the other stuff, yeah. But there's just something good about having getting good value. And so because
so would you lose money initially, or would you break even, or how?
No, because it's once again it's partly positioning, so partly creating a perception of how this is good. I remember this one campaign that I was involved with. It was for a very basic product, right? It was for mosquito coils, and if you think about it, it's just the stuff you light up, and it's the manufactured product, like maybe a Santa coil, and how do you differentiate in a market where everything looks the same, even the active ingredient? So the whole ploy was you change the color. And the whole it's like the A2 milk thing.
Yeah.
It's like red coils work better than green coils, or whatever it was, black, or I can't remember what the color was, but whatever the color was, and the whole promotion was around how red coils are so much better, and because on the shelf, when you looked at the retail shelf, you'd see like an ocean of green and then red, and so obviously you just stood out, and that was essentially how the whole branding was done. So it wasn't the genius was in the simplicity of it.
So do you to create offers like that, do you need to pull someone who's not from the industry to create that, or?
No, so there, the core ingredient is being able to, or the core success factor is being really tough with the negotiations. Yeah, you need to drive the price down, and there's just kind of no way around that, because in order to get. Because what you want to do is you want to come up with a better product at a slightly lower price, if not the same price. Now, if you do that, what's your competition going to do? Okay, well, they have to lower the price. Would be the most logical way around it. Now, the other strategy we use is you come up with a better product at a slightly higher price. Now, if that offer works, then your competition is basically you've just made them obsolete, because what are they going to do? Raise the price? Because you're already more expensive than them. And so but do you have enough credibility in your product? So say, for example, if you've been able to come up with a product, or you've been able to find a product that has got ingredients that are hard to get, or ingredients that only the company from which you're sourcing the product has got a patent for or something. And then obviously, that's like a win-win-win, because now you just gave in yourself an edge that cannot be replicated.
I guess some markets you can really do that. Ones that usually require lots of R&D, or
correct, or
just really innovative idea. Should be lucky.
Yeah,
it's lucky
that's
to
right.
luck.
That's right. Yeah, so it's going to function of a few things. One is can you come up with a product? But sometimes, you know what? And here's the other thing I notice is sometimes if you're an outsider in a market, you'll see an ingredient that everyone has added into their product, but no one's ever spoken about it. And so you just highlight that ingredient as to, this is the one that we have. And that's not to say the others don't.
the classic beer story, if you remember the...
That's right, yeah. The triple cleaning of the bottles or whatever it was.
I forget the exact story, but basically it was about beer. And at this point, beer had become a saturated market. People... muchness.
Yeah,
they wanted to launch a new product. They went to his advertiser and gave him a tour of the factory, and just basically said to him, he was getting fascinated, like, this is really exciting. Like, why are you talking to people? It's like, because everyone does it.
Yeah.
Then talk about it. No one else is talking about it yet.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. Yeah, and that's essentially what you want to do with your product as well, is to have a look and see what are the things that everyone is doing but no one's ever spoken about? Because that's an easy win, right? Like, there's no R&D involved, there's nothing. It's just a messaging campaign. And so, yeah, there's probably a chance it's not going to work, but you know what? It's not about whether it's going to work or not. It's no risk. It's not like you're having to come up with a whole new product.
You're just talking about what you're already doing.
It's just a new conversation that you're starting. And I'm guessing that's probably what the A2 guys have done. I don't know enough about cows to say that whether they did or not, but I doubt they went out and found this whole new cow that didn't exist before. Of course they did, but they just highlighted either they found some new research and highlighted. But I'd be curious to see if the research is probably, I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if the research is 50 years old, but no one's ever used it. And so it's essentially that's what they've done, right? They've taken a story that has already existed in the market and just highlighted it. I remember doing that for a hair care product that I worked with some years ago. I ran into some research that said that the hair is weakest right after it's washed, and I was just fascinated. I was like, wow. I mean, I asked a whole bunch of people, and they're like, no, we didn't know that. And so then the ad campaign was around the the dirt cheap household ingredient that's ruining your hair, or something to that. It was very clickbaity, but it worked because it was like, what is this damn thing that's ruining my hair?
It's water.
Yeah, and it was just water. Exactly. It was just water.
So that's what happened.
Yeah,
Nick, you really shouldn't have touched the water.
That's right. Chemical water. And so you're right. It's doing a whole bunch of research about your customers, about your product, and about the stories that have already been told, and then stepping back and seeing what about this hasn't been spoken about. What about this can we highlight? And sometimes, so it's sometimes going to be a combination of positioning, product, and the third one escapes me. Positioning, product,
Price.
and price.
3 Ps.
Correct. Yeah. Our 3 Ps. And
4 Ps.
of course, there's more ways of doing it. But you're looking for quick, easy wins. That's essentially what you're doing. Is can you?
Kellogg did that. The 4 Ps marketing.
No, I don't know who created it. Well, Philip Kotler in his marketing, so he talked about it. Yeah, the 4 Ps, and then it became the 8 Ps, which is place, product, pricing, and promotions. That's the first 4, and then the second 4. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since Marketing 101, so I can't remember. But yeah, so that's essentially is what we want to do with our sales process. And then the process of how you're going to communicate, that's when the sales process comes in. But you really do need to have done the research first. Now, some of the research is going to be actually doing the research. The other is coming up with your hunches that you want to test. And it's important not to because if you've been looking at something for a long time, you'll end up getting ideas about this that no one in the market has. And I think sometimes because there's no data point to validate it, we throw it out. When I think it's probably going to be a high ROI opportunity to at least test it out.
It's valid. I mean, yes, if you're looking at what everyone else is doing, you're never going to get the right result. So speak to the market and try to find an angle that way of approaching no one else has.
Where's the arbitrage, right? If I'm going to do what everybody else is doing, then how am I going to stand out? So where's the arbitrage?
At best, you'll get the results they're getting.
Why should the marketplace reward me with extraordinary profits for doing the same thing everybody else does? And that is the fundamental question everybody needs to ask: is in what way can you create the perception of being unique and relevant?
I guess it's going back to the issue with quote unquote funnel hacking.
That's right. It's just you're creating a Me Too funnel.
The best you're going to get is a Me Too, and if you get a Me Too, why should the market reward you? Especially if they know the other ones come first.
Yeah, it shouldn't, and it won't. And so that's why people just waste a lot of their time hacking, when I think you'd be better off thinking and taking a bit of a step back and saying, okay, cool, that's what these guys are doing. What are the lessons from this that I can derive and use right now or test with? And then what is everybody else not talking about? Because the first guy to come up with a funnel that worked really well is probably a new idea. And then everybody runs after it and copies it. But the bulk of the money has already been made by the first guy. And or can you come up with a better version of it? Would probably be the more pragmatic way of how to do all this hacking stuff. But these are all short-term gains. You really need to find an edge that no one can grab off you for some period. I think Bezos, one of his interviews, talks about he's often seen that you get a 3-year head start, if that.
Yeah, I think he was amazed that they had a 10-year head start before anyone else started playing in that space.
AWS or Prime, I can't remember which one.
AWS, because they had the services they started offering, because they created the capabilities for themselves purely because they needed to, then other people needed it.
Yeah. It often starts out like that. That's how LeadZook started. I built it for myself.
Alright, so I think we've covered a fair bit of ground here. What are we talking about next episode?
All right. I don't know. What does everybody else want to hear? It's yeah, I don't know, let's talk about how no, let's do one that's really counterintuitive. Let's talk about the marketing, the how to build a business that no one is talking about, like how to trust your hunch. I find that really fascinating because it's counter research.
Right, there you have it. How to trust your hunch. It sounds like some woo-woo kind of crap.
Yeah, that's right. Tony Robbins will turn up. Yeah, so and I'll share some research that I've come across recently by a guy called Gerd Garanza, where he talks about heuristics as a way to gain an edge.
I'd actually be curious to talk about the seminar model. Some of the stuff they do that they don't talk about and that they'll never tell you that they do.
Which one is it? Sorry again?
Some of the seminar kind of sales persuasion stuff. I'd love to talk about that and some of the stuff that they do that they don't necessarily tell you that they're doing.
Yeah, that's the whole getting compliance by making, you rub your neighbor's shoulders.
Mess with the room, getting people tying in, playing around with temperatures a little bit.
Yeah, that, the music to fire you up. I mean, if you go, I guess...
I'm getting right into this. I think that's a topic that...
Okay, well then let's talk about that.
I think that's a topic that's timely at the moment, and I think that no one wants to talk about it. There's some people know about it, but no one actually talks about the side that no one...
Techniques. The Black Hat seminar technique.
Black Hat... The manipulation side of things that goes on that I don't think anyone really...
Okay.
It's the elephant in the room, I think.
Yeah, okay, fine. Let's talk about that.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Right, anything else?
I think that's it. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, this episode, please do us a favour, like it, share it, ask any questions in the comments so we know what to, I guess, add value for you guys next time. If you have any ideas for topics, let us know. We're going to try to keep this podcast fresh, a little bit different, and try to keep it as refreshing as we can. So until next time, we'll see you all very soon.
Cheers. Thank you, guys. Bye for now.